And so when I think about today, I think about how critical character and leadership is in adverse times, the ability to lead and say, why not me in these times? And so for me, being a hockey player as a little girl when I wasn't supposed to play the sport, I think about all of the people who have taught me lessons along the way. And if I go back to my first real opportunity to get into the broadcast booth at an Olympic Winter Games, I think back to the challenging year of the Sochi Olympics. And many of you won't remember it, but if you actually Google the final game, women's hockey 2014, I was in the broadcast booth with Mr. Gord Miller. And the women were losing by 2 goals with just over 3 minutes remaining in the game. And Gord turns to me and he says, Pounder, which is a great hockey name, I know. He says, Pounder, do you think they have a chance? And I kind of looked at him because we always have a chance. And I knew the room, the women in that room. And I turned to him and I said, if they get just one, at which point they scored, and I whipped off my headset and I left the booth. I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was emotional because that's me. They ended up scoring the second goal and then winning in overtime to win the Olympic gold medal. And that energy really sits with me to this very day because the women had a choice, just like we have a choice in the way in which we choose to look at our environment today. You know, they had a choice to lean to sort of their negative side and say, this is crap. Why are we going through this? You know, we've lost. And they're tired, perhaps, and they're irritable. So judgment is in the middle. And they said, no, I'm not listening to you, my negative side. I'm going to choose to listen to you, and I'm going to fight for my good side, and I'm going to stand by you. And they ended up winning that Olympic gold medal. Not because it was the gold medal, and that was, of course, the end goal for them, but because they never gave up on one another. And so in these times, we have to talk to ourselves in a manner of how can we look at this and force ourselves to stay on that positive side. Reminds me of the energy when I was a little girl. I always share the story because my grandma was my person. When I think back to being that little girl and people saying, no, you shouldn't, my grandma was the one who said, why not you? I knew her story. She was an athlete in the 1940s. She had a contract for baseball at Wrigley Field, but she was a female and she said no. And what she did, what I would encourage each and every one of you to do is she found her voice. The ability to stand up for what she believed in, and she decided to do it through me because one day my mom was just about to turn on the television and I was sitting beside my grandma, who's become my person, now sits on this side. Anytime I really need to think about which way I need to lean, she kind of pops up because she's my person. And I remember my mom walked in and she's about to turn on the TV and she said, it's something hopeful and inspiring that's on, but it's not about sport. It's about inspiration and the belief that each and every one of us can do something great. Find your passion. And she turned it on. It was the opening ceremonies to the Olympic Winter Games, at which point I said to my grandma, I'm going to be there one day. My grandma looked at me and she said 3 words: believe in yourself. Now, they're kind of cliche words, right? We hear them all the time. And how hard is it to really feel those 3 magnificent words? For the course of my career, including today, still trying to find a way to consistently do that. Believe in yourself. And then she said, you'll never know unless you try. These were impactful words for me, and they gave me courage because, you know, it takes great courage, like Judson, to get up and dance, to explore and not be afraid to try because you might look silly, but hey, you might find out what you really love. And so it's interesting, when I went up to my bedroom after she gave me those words, I started writing words all over my bedroom walls, words like courage, passion, commitment, dedication. I didn't even spell half of them right. Because I was 8 with that dream that I am going to go to the Olympic Winter Games. Women's hockey wasn't even in the Olympics, so it was an impossible dream. But sometimes we've got to reach for what we love, even when it's not right in front of us. Those words would grow with me. And over the course of my career, adversity would mean something different to me. Commitment, sacrifice. Just like all of those words would mean something different in your lives. I listened to a mother once speak, and she said, stand on top of your story. Man, that's powerful. So I'm sharing a little bit of mine with you, but yours is as important. So what's your story? All the good, the bad, and the ugly that goes with it makes you, you. And in order to be you, you gotta own your story and your vision. And so I had this energy and I wanted to play the game that I love. And I got my start in Mississauga, playing at the age of 8. And I would climb my way up until I got to the age of 17 years. And my coach comes up to me and he says, Pounder, I believe that you are a defenseman. Now, I had been a forward my whole life. So he's saying to me, full change, and I didn't like it. But I had to work up the courage to talk to him about it. Why? Accountability, feedback. I used to run when someone wanted to talk to me about feedback, constructive. Oh, maybe if they don't catch me, I won't hear it. But how powerful can it be to get feedback? And so the way he communicated with me, and communication is the key, that if we can learn at a younger age how to communicate effectively, and that doesn't mean it's easy, because sometimes you have to be very real in your communication, respectful, but real. And then he said to me, you know, Cheryl, we're going to change you into that defenseman. You'll be good no matter what, because you're a really strong skater. And he said something that lives with me. And if you could take a pen and write this down right now, I would hope that you would. He said, Cheryl, will you participate or will you engage in your role? There's a clear difference. You know, we can sit in our 4 walls and on our screens and just kind of go through life. Or we can, you know, be present right now. Engage, to grow. And I elected to engage. And I asked some tough questions. I had some great people around me, a network. Why wouldn't I ask? You know, it's interesting. What is the first thing we learn in kindergarten? Share. So if we share information and help one another, how strong can we be? What kind of impact will we have on one another? I turned into that defenseman. And I went to my first ever national championships and we won, and I came home and I was so excited to share the gold medal with my best friend. And I was at her house and all of a sudden the phone rang and it was my mom. She said, you've got to come home. And I ran home and there sitting on our kitchen table was a phone number and it said, Mr. Les Lawton. I said, Mom, who is it? She said, oh, it's the coach of the national team. He's looking for you. So I'm like really confident young girl. And I take the piece of paper and I hand it to my mom and I go, Mommy, you call. Because all of a sudden this side is saying, whoa, what does he want to do with you? You're not good. How many times do you say that to yourself? This side starts speaking a little louder and say, muster up some courage, girl, you can do this, you can do this. And which side is louder? So my mom finally says, muster up some confidence and courage, he's looking for you. So I dialed that number and I was trembling and I will never forget the conversation. He said, Cheryl, I watched you play this past week and I loved the intangible. I'm like, Mommy, what's intangible? I didn't know what it meant. No, the work ethic, the body language, how you interact with your teammates. It wasn't about the hardest shot, the greatest skater. It was about how we work together. We said, we had someone who cannot attend our training camp because she's been injured next week. Would you like to take her spot as a defenseman? Sometimes we don't see our potential. And often it takes someone else to share what they think our potential is. Thankfully, I trusted in that coach, that mentor. I was walking in to that final selection camp and I met Mr. Lawton. He put out his hand, I shook his hand. He said, congratulations at being here, Cheryl. There's 35 players here and you're number 35. He's saying, you're not going to make this team. But can you learn and grow from the opportunity you are now being given? And I left there and I was angry because I'm a type A personality. I wanted to show him. But I had a problem. Feeling a sense of belonging. all of a sudden I didn't feel like I fit. So I got on the ice and I tried to do things that weren't me. The very things that got me there, I stopped doing. Trying to be someone I wasn't, a player that I was not. And we can always grow, but I was a strong defensive player. And now I'm just trying to do things what I think they want to see. And I'm struggling. And then all of a sudden, one of the veterans comes up to me and says, Pounder, kid, is that your name? And I said, yeah. She said, you know what you're doing? I said, I have no idea. Specific drill. She said, watch me. Go to the middle of the line. Don't just do it fast, do it right. What was she doing? She was helping me. I started to feel that sense of belonging. So the impact she was having on me, just by going first in line, was affecting my performance. It's a nice reminder that our words, our actions have an effect on people, and we may not even know it. Because to this very day, I still have not told that woman, and I will, that she changed the course of my career by going first and sitting with me in the lunchroom. I was proud of my performance because I started to get better and better and better. And I had to walk in and meet Mr. Lawton. And I walked in and I shook his hand. I remember what my mom had said to me, thank God, relationships are everything. And I knew I wasn't going to make it, but I was proud because often we have to take those little moments that we are proud of and celebrate them. And I shook his hand and he said, Cheryl, congratulations. There'll be no next time for you because you just made Team Canada. And I was bawling my eyes out. I started crying and I hugged him. And I think to this very day, how did it happen? Well, there's one thing for me. Someone helped. The impact of that. The second was I seized the opportunity. And in life, we're going to get opportunities to dance. And we can sit along the wall because we do not want to try or expose ourselves, or we can get uncomfortable and learn maybe that we love it. And if we don't know, we don't try it again. But because someone helped me, I realized that, you know what? Character is linked to an individual's disposition, not their position on a team or in the classroom. It's who you are. And I said, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to help. Even if I feel threatened, with a friendship or someone's getting closer, I am going to help until, of course, I went into a threatening environment. And that environment would have been the 2006 Olympic team. I wasn't sure what was going to happen because we lost the year before, and the coaching staff took 29 of us to Prince Edward Island to train full-time to try and make the Olympic team. And I remember getting there and thinking, I've got to show them. Cheryl, you need to show them. So this side is saying, Cheryl, you need to show them you're number one. You got to show them, because I was threatened. And this side gets very, very quiet because I'm tired and it's off balance. And so I start listening to the louder side. As we were nearing the end of our 29 days, because we were exhausted, because we wake up in the morning and go for a beach run after we ate, so important to fuel our mind and bodies. We do 2 hours on the ice, then we do stick handling and shooting and bike riding. You're absolutely exhausted. And when you're tired, think about it. You don't get proper rest when you wake up in the morning and your parents try and get you up for school. Bet you're not so pleasant. I have a teenager, and here we are. I'm exhausted. And as we're nearing the end, the coach says, no, instead of going on the ice, we rented each and every one of you a bike for the next 4 days, 3 nights. You're going to ride your bike around Prince Edward Island in your groups of 3 and 4, who you're living with, in cabins along the water and PEI. We were exhausted. We had to do this bike ride. And I remember we had to do it together. But I was the best cyclist on the team. And I knew it. Certainly in my group. I'd show the coaches I was first. This side starts yelling, go, leave. And this side saying, integrity. I'm tired, so boom. And I left. Crossed the finish line first. Check. Coach saw me. Check. And then I went to set up my tent. And I couldn't. The tents they'd given us required more than one person to set them up. I realized that I was so driven that I wasn't very collaborative. And I walked up to my teammates, and it was a very humbling experience because I compromised my integrity, trust. And I looked at them and I kind of asked for forgiveness. I said, I don't know why I did it. And they had some choice words, but they forgave me because humanity is such an unbelievable thing. I would show them that next day on the bike ride that I would go first and push and pedal with the wind and the rain at my face. And I did that. We came to one of our first rest stops, and one of the girls couldn't go. And so we're trying to cheer her on, and she won't go. She's tired. And she starts to talk to us about stuff that's going on in her life, at home, mental health. And because we knew, we put her in the middle, and we pulled her the rest of the way, and we drafted around her. We pulled her. We crossed that finish line in record time. Had we never known that she was struggling, we would have expected her to take the lead. But I realized today, each and every one of us will have a moment where we are in the middle and we need to be pulled. We need to know. We crossed the finish line on the 28th day. I was tired, I was exhausted. We had one day left and we had to do a triathlon. We had some near drownings in the pool, some terrible accidents on the bike path, and we finished. And we're all congregating around one another and we're hugging. We didn't all like one another, but there was just a foundational respect. And while we're hugging and we're dancing up and down because it's over, the coach gets in and she looks at us and she said, ladies, today is your 29th, your final day, and it's your most difficult day. Each and every one of you had a breaking point. What did you do? Who did you talk to? Which side did you lean to? How well do you know yourself? Because when you leave for the Olympic Winter Games, you will be on the road for exactly 29 days. You will be tired, you will be irritable, and hey, you will want to decide. You might need to talk to someone. You might need to write. I journal. What are you going to do to help you? The 29th day is going to be gold medal day, and it was going to be the toughest. And we needed to know we could do it, but we would need help. And that was each other. We came up with our slogan. Yes, we have the t-shirt. It's take care of yourself and take care of each other. And I really carried that with me the rest of the year. And right before the team was named, we had a long training run. And I'll never forget it because I remembered what I had done on this bike path. I remember that I had left my team and I had really said to myself, I'm going to learn from this and it's not going to happen again. And as we're about to start to set out for this long 14-kilometer run, which I'm not good at, the cumulative effect of the work was just so fatiguing. I was feeling just down. And all of a sudden, one of my French teammates, who I don't hang out with all the time, she comes up to me and she says, Pounder, which is the best French I can do. I apologize if it's not good. And she said, will you run with me? And I said, of course I will. Of course I will. And why? Because we were going to need help. She was a similar runner as I, and she was tired. So we start jogging. We're a couple kilometers in. And she's hunched over and she's done. She is done. And she says, Pounder, you must leave me. Go. I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I gotta get there. Like, this team is gonna be big soon. And I'm a leader on this team and I'm still thinking this way. Can't help it. And she says, go. And she's actually swearing at me now. And I'm giving her my best pep talk because this side is saying, leave, you gotta make this team. It's the Olympics. This side saying, you did this before. So I had this conversation with myself. I'm teetering, and finally I made the decision. Boom, I turned to her and I said, I am not leaving you. Maybe not in those perfect words. So are you done? She looked at me and she said, fine. She kept running. 2 kilometers later, guess who stopped? I did. Hunched over. You gotta go, Pounder. I cannot. We actually crossed the finish line, holding hands, crying. We made it. Nice. We both played together my last Olympics. When I started this little talk, I mentioned Gord Miller turning to me in Sochi and asking me if I thought that Team Canada had a chance. Damn right they did. He was still in that room. When they went down and put the gold medals around their neck, and they were all crying, and I was crying, trying to broadcast it, I noticed that she had the C on her chest. And captain. you're reelected. She wouldn't have left them. I knew definitively in an environment where it is diverse and there's change and we're afraid, we need one another. We need optimism, we need hope. And there she was. Do you think they have a chance? She grew into a leader on that bike path with me, on that running path with me. Weren't born naturally great leaders. She became one through the choices she made. But can you learn from them? Can you learn that when everything's being canceled, you can say, no, but guess what? Here's an opportunity. For the first time in my career, I looked at this pandemic and I asked for opportunity in the broadcasting world. Taking a leap of faith, and hey, it's not always going to go our way. But can we look? Can we be aware of ourselves? And if we can get to know ourselves, so if I ask you in this closing, do you know yourself? And for many of you, you're so young, but to be here and to be engaged in this conference, it is absolutely unbelievable what our future can be with people like you who are invested and willing to look and learn. So drive the hope, drive energy, and be. And the words that Cassie Campbell Haskell said to me as I was entering this broadcasting world, believe you belong. And those are the three words I will leave you with on behalf of Cassie, because they are her words. Believe in yourself, and it's not easy. From my grandma. Believe you belong, and share that message and have an impact on you and those around you.